Welcome onto the channel. This is Sprues and Studs, and a little while ago I released a video detailing exactly where all the different parts of the Armoring Hull Edition Space Marine came from. And in that video I said that I would release another video detailing whenever I paint this blank Marine into completion. And it looks like the time is now for that particular video. As a person who critiques action figures, it is very easy to sit in your high seat and scrutinize every single little detail that the manufacturer might have missed on an action figure. So I figured it was time to go back to my painting roots and put my money where my mouth is. All right, the first thing that we're gonna need to do over here is do this assembly. Now, I would recommend you have a couple tools. Obviously, your hands are the best tool in this situation, so you can pry things apart. But there's going to be some ball joints that will probably require the use of this pair of pliers. And if you don't want to damage the plastic that's on the figure, I would recommend you to use some sort of cloth as a barrier so that these little grooves will not make these indentations on the plastic itself. So the next thing that you're going to want to do is to mask off the areas in which you don't want the paint to go into, especially when I spray paint the primer coat. And the biggest thing is not to get the paint in any of these joint type areas. So I'll definitely be masking off this area. I'm not going to show the whole entire process because it's pretty tedious. All right, after far too long, I have masked off every single area that needs to be masked off, especially in the joints area. For example, the socket joints have been covered up, bottom of the head covered up, and I've actually removed the lenses for the LEDs over here. I'm going to demonstrate to you. This has been removed out because I don't want to paint over the LEDs or the lenses. And then pretty much every other inch is covered where it needs to be covered. So what now remains to be done is a heck of a lot of painting, starting off with the primer. We are back from priming. There's really nothing much to show, but this is actually a pretty important part because, well, the primer is what allows the base coat as well as the layered coat grab onto the action figure itself. So now let's get to the base coat. Once again, thank you so much, Bruce and the staff at JoyToy for providing this action figure for me to review and now to paint. You guys at JoyToy do amazing work, and please continue on with your excellent customer service. Who is JoyToy, you might ask? Well, they are a very reputable dealer for these Warhammer 40K and Horus Heresy action figures that I review on my channel. And they happen to be a very strong supporter of this channel, in which I am very grateful for. They provide exemplary customer service and provide also fast and free shipping. So click on the link in the description below, where you will be brought to their website where you can procure all these lovely, delicious plastic crack action figures to purchase. And before you check out, please use my affiliate code SNS to receive 12% off your purchase. And yes, I do receive commission on those clicks when you buy them, but the thing is, with all the money that I make on a commission, I pump right back in the channel, where I would actually buy some action figures that I normally would not buy for this channel. So I decided that the Space Marine armor is going to be purple, specifically using the Citadel color, Phoenician purple. So I will now proceed to slather this paint all over the armor panels. So I will proceed to do this with every single lovely armor panel on the Space Marine. The first base coat of Phoenician purple has been laid on, and I'm kind of okay with the results. When I'm painting this large of a scale of a figure, it reminds me of painting the miniature form of a predator, in that there's a lot of surface area over here. And as the second coat is going on right now, you'll notice that the color is obviously getting more richer, more full. All right, the second coat has gone on, and unfortunately there are some lumps in the paint, which I really can't do anything about because, well, I put the paint on a little bit too thick. Again, if you have a large surface area and you're hand painting, then you have to do multiple coats, like probably 3 to 4 coats now that I realize, of very, very thin paint. So the next thing that I'm gonna do is paint the wing skull icon with Retributor armor. Pretty much the same thing is gonna be done here. We're gonna have 2 coats to cover up the black of the primer, and we're just gonna carefully go along, just like we did with the rest of the action figure. The second coat of Retributor armor has been put on this winged skull. And I would say it looks pretty good. But as I said with gold in many reviews past, that while this looks lustrous, it needs shading. And of course, if I harp on it that much, you know that I'm going to shade the shit out of this area. However, before we do that, we still have some other things that we need to do. So I like to use lead belcher to go through this area right here, painted silver or dark gunmetal, as well as this and this. So let's get to it. All right, lead belcher has been applied to this area and where the helmet goes. Next thing I'm going to do is to color up these rivets right here. All right, as some of the layer coats are done, the next thing to do is to shade certain areas, with the first one starting with this gold wing skull. And we are going to be using Reichland Flesh Shade for this. The other areas that we're going to be shading is this band type of thing, and we're going to be using Nuln Oil. Same thing with Nuln Oil up here with the helmet area. And then I'm going to be shading within the recesses of these armor panels here. And then finally, I'm going to be using contrast paint, specifically Black Templar, to go into these very deep grooves here. There are a few methods that you can use for shading. One is probably the easiest one, which is just slather the whole entire area full of shade. And then the more precise method is pin washing, where you're only shading like these deep recesses right here. For this gold wing skull, I will be using the slather on method, just because I want coverage all over the place. And this is what I'm talking about when you're giving gold some more depth, as I have commented many a time in my action figure reviews. You can see how the shading really brings out the character of the feathers. The unfortunate side effect of doing the slathering on method is it actually darkens up this area. So what you're going to need to do is lighten it up later. Next thing to do is to hit the silver areas with Nuln Oil, and pretty much we are going to make sure to follow the same method that we did before, which is slather this stuff on so that the shade is going to pool into the recesses like it's doing right now. And you can see the exact contrast that shading can have versus this side, which looks dull and flat. All right, the body of this action figure has been shaded. Obviously, I put some shade on the wings, darkened these eye sockets, darkened this area over here, as well as these silver areas. You can see that the armor panels are darkened as well as this top area too. The thing about edge highlighting is that you're actually not using the tip of the brush, you're actually using the edge of the brush to catch on the highest areas. So I will do that right now. Now you can see the edges slowly get brightened up, which is exactly what we want. And I'm just reusing the layer coat, which is Retributor Armor. The next thing I'm going to do is use this Auric Armor Gold, because it is the next gold that is brighter than the Retributor Armor, to further bring out the gold areas on this figure. So the highest areas on this particular Space Marine would be these upper regions right here, and this is kind of a technique that is used quite a lot when I'm painting my miniatures. Now, the interesting thing about looking at gold is that there's actually silver in it. There's silver because at the highest points it catches the glint of light, and because it is the highest point, when you're highlighting these areas, it should be very thin and very precise and very measured. So only the highest points are going to receive this silver highlighting. And to achieve that effect, I am going to be using Stormhost Silver. And this is just going to be a very, very light and calculated application. So the areas that I'm choosing to highlight are going to be these highest areas on the wing, and it's going to be very subtle. And there you go, you see the silver highlighting effect that catches the eye at the highest points. All right, we have made some significant progress since the last time I turned on the cameras, and you will notice that I have highlighted these rivets with the Stormhost Silver. I've also went over and highlighted some armor panels with Gene Stealer Purple. I've also highlighted some of these areas on this cable over here, and we're just going to move on to the helmet area. A little bit of time has passed since I last recorded, and since that time I have actually painted the helmet purple, but most of the action is down here at the lower part of the helmet, where I have painted this area purple. I have shaded this gunmetal area. I've also shaded the gunmetal area back here as well. So everything is pretty much nearly ready to go for some highlighting, so I can bring up the shading again. All right, we are at a point in time in which we can start assembling some parts together. So I'm gonna put back together the helmet, see what it looks like, and then I will put the helmet on top of the body. Now let's put the helmet back on the Marine. We have a Space Marine on our hands with the helmet, and I'll have to say, you know what? So far, looks pretty damn good to me. I thought that I would save you all from the boredom of putting the base coat on. So what we're gonna do now is basically to shade these gold areas here and on the inside, and then shade in between the gold trim and the purple. And I think what I'm gonna end up doing is probably putting on some highlighting up here as well with Auric armor, just to give it a little bit more spice and flavor. So let's get to it. Now that this area has dried, I am now going to shade this armor panel over here. What I'm going to be using is pin washing, which means that I'm actually not going to slather the shade all over the place. I just want this in a certain area right here. So pin washing means that everything is more controlled. The shading in between the panels is done. I think it looks pretty decent. The last thing that I'm gonna do for this area is to actually highlight this edge right here, as well as this outer edge. And once again, I will be using the edge of my brush, not the tip of it. Here is the finished pauldron. And then I've kind of spared you how the arm looks. And I also kind of lost a little bit of patience here. So the paint is rather chunky. Hopefully the other arm would look a little bit better, but thankfully most of this stuff will get covered. Now all we need to do is pop this part back in, then pop this back on the Marine. And all right, this Marine is slowly coming together. Now let's take a look at the progress that was made. Do you like the use of this brush to mount this hand right here? So what I did with the hand is as follows. I used Nuln Oil to shade in between the fingers, and then I hit the highest points of the hand with Genestealer Purple like I would normally do. So let's go ahead and attach the hand onto the body of the Marine. And so far, this is the progress that we have made. We will now be moving on to the lower section right here. As you can see, the Phoenician Purple has been laid onto the tassets, as well as the groin region. The next thing I want to do is color up the belt over here, and I really wanted to give this belt a rich, warm kind of color, so I will use a base coat of Mournfang Brown. And then these recesses over here, I'm gonna be hitting with an Agrax Earthshade. And then finally at the top of the belt, I will be highlighting with a Scrag Brown. The base coat for the belt area has been done. And you will notice that, yes, there are some mistakes and over paints and all that stuff, and that will be corrected in the very near future. It is time to deepen the effects here. The belt region has been effectively shaded. Now we need to add even more contrast to the whole entire area, which means that it's time for highlighting. All panels, all areas have been both shaded and highlighted up to the point in which I'm okay with it. And you can tell that there is a lot of life that has been brought to this area. I think I've spent the most time in this area. Again, I'm gonna spare you the tediousness of painting this whole entire leg until we pretty much get up to the point in which I'm going to be shading and highlighting again. Right leg has been base coated. It's finally nice to add a little bit of color to this very monotone purple that I've been painting for quite a while. So I am going to paint these purity seals here, at least the ribbon part, green because it contrasts well with the purple. Highlight it with Cyberite green, also a shade with the Beeltan green. And then for the seal itself, I will be using Screamer Pink, highlighting with Pink Horror, and shading with Carlberg Crimson. Base coat of purity seal is done. Now it's time for shading. The next thing to do is to highlight up this purity seal. I believe that that's a wrap for this leg area. I've shaded enough and highlighted enough to make the different armor areas pop. I have decided to move on to the holster over here, and what I'm going to do is use Agrax Earthshade to completely cover this whole entire holster, because I really want the shade to pull in these indentations in the leather. And now I'm migrating to highlighting with Scrag Brown. I would have to say that this holster is pretty much done. You can see we've buttoned up this area a little bit, brought out a little bit more detail. Now it's time to attach it to the back of the Marine, and voila, done. Once again, I've spared you all the monotony of putting on the base coat on this particular backpack, and what I'm going to do now is hit this area with shading. Well, that there is a backpack suitable for an Astartes. Areas that I thought that should be shaded have been shaded. There's little highlights on the rivets here, as well as these vents. Time to give the Marine his backpack. Do the ceremonial fitting in the back, and voila, the Marine has his backpack. I'd have to say from a distance, he looks pretty damn good. The only thing left to do is the chainsword and the bolt pistol. I would say that this is a bolt pistol done. So the base black is Abaddon black, and then the gunmetal portions have been painted with lead belcher, then shaded with Nuln oil. Then Stormhost silver was used to bring out the accents on the gunmetal portions. And finally, the highlights on the top, I used Dawnstone. Alright, it's time to update you on the progress of this chainsword. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of cleaning up to do, especially with this edge over here. So I'm going to be hitting that with Abaddon black. And then the teeth of the chainsword, as well as the other gunmetal parts, once again, I used lead belcher. The gold parts on the chainsword have been colored up with Retributor armor. And then the bindings have been colored with Screamer pink. So the plan for this gold area, I'm not going to wash the whole entire thing, is to hit it with Reichland Flesh Shade, especially in these grooves, especially here. As usual, Nuln oil will be used to shade up the teeth as well as this region here. More Reichland Flesh Shade will be used here. I think I will be using Black Templar contrast to color in the eyes down here. And finally, the bindings will be shaded with Carlberg Crimson. And here we have the finished product. Over here we have the skull. I just decided to highlight it up with the base coat of Retributor armor. And then instead of Pink Horror, I decided to use Screamer Pink above the Carlberg Crimson. So it's basically using a base coat shade and then using that same base coat again for a subtle kind of look to it. Stormhost silver has been used for the silver parts as well as on the teeth. And then what was driving me a little bit crazy was this gold part. There was some gold that was actually sticking up from the black and then alternate gold black, especially in this groove area. So that was not the exact look that I was trying to go for. So I said, screw it, I'm going to use Black Templar to basically cover up this whole entire region. So this is a more uniform look that I actually like. Now there's nothing to do except give this knight his sword, and so we have action figure complete. Well, members of the chapter, what do you think of this custom action figure that I painted myself? Do you think that I actually achieved all the critiques that I would normally talk about when I'm reviewing action figures, such as highlighting and shading? Please let me know what your comments are down below. So I will let you know what I thought about my very own paint job. And to be honest, I probably have to straight up give myself a solid B for this action figure. I'm not happy with a couple things that turned out on this action figure, especially with the first one being the paint texture. From afar, the action figure looks absolutely fine, but up close, I think that the paint looks a little bit too chunky and has too much texture to it. And this is partly because I laid on the paint a little bit too thick due to my impatience, as well as some debris getting into my paint. And I'm very well aware that these issues could have been resolved by using an airbrush, and to be honest, the time in which it actually took to paint this action figure probably could have been cut in half by using that. But I've always been a hand painter, so that's exactly what I did for this action figure. The second thing I'm not too happy about is the highlights. They are a little bit too thin in some areas and way too thick in other areas. It just looks a little bit uneven and unbalanced. However, I am very proud of this action figure that I have created myself because it was customized to my very own expectations and my very own wants. I take personal pride that likely no one else has this action figure in this color combination, and that really is enough for me. So now this Nightshade Chapter Marine will stand behind me proudly for other action figure reviews to come. Thank you so much for watching, members of the chapter. I am much appreciative of your likes, comments, subscribes, and those of you who actually use my affiliate code. You guys are the best. And with that being said, I'll see you all in the next one.